They say this is a movie that has literally scared people to death. Experts conducted an experiment with nearly 50 viewers watching this film, and their heart rate shot up to 103 beats per minute. You should know that normally, a person's resting heart rate is only about 65 beats per minute, so you can imagine just how terrifying this movie really is. Alright, enough talk, let's begin. The story starts with a boy named Damian. From the day he was born, he never once got sick, and not a single child wanted to get near him. Even the monkeys at the zoo kept their distance. This made the boy a freak in everyone's eyes. On the day Damian was born, 3 planets were discovered falling to Earth in Eastern Europe. According to the Bible, falling planets meant Satan had arrived on Earth, and our world would face an unprecedented catastrophe. Speaking of Satan, let me jump in here for a second. In the Bible, Satan was originally an angel, but was thrown out of heaven for his pride and rebellion against God, becoming hell's ruler and humanity's tempter. In the Old Testament, Satan is mainly portrayed as a prosecutor in God's court, testing people's loyalty. In the New Testament, he's more of a specific opposing force, representing evil and rebellion against God. In exorcism circles, there's a saying, if Jesus is hanging upside down, grab holy water and a crucifix immediately. But it wasn't until 30 years ago, when the 60-second demon Valak suddenly emerged, that Jesus abandoned his cross overnight. I'm off topic. Alright, let's pick up where we left off. On that very day, diplomat Robert's son tragically passed away, and his wife's difficult labor meant she could never bear children again. Shortly after, a priest brought Robert to another delivery room where a baby had just been born, but the mother had died during childbirth. Because this child has no other relatives in this world, the priest believed it was a divine arrangement, so Robert took the initiative to offer to adopt him, and decided to hide from his wife that their child died during birth. Ever since Damian arrived, good things had been happening non-stop at home. Within a year, Robert was smoothly promoted from section chief to second-in-command of the diplomats. Not long after that, while the ambassador was out on a visit, a beggar by the roadside was dragging a manhole cover, and this motion accidentally struck a stone that was wedged under the car's wheel. Subsequently, the tanker truck slid along due to inertia and eventually crashed straight into the U.S. Embassy car. A large amount of gasoline instantly spread throughout the compartment, but at that moment, the other party suddenly dropped their cigarette butt, and the ash happened to ignite the spilled fuel. After the ambassador's unexpected accident, Robert naturally stepped into his position. Everything seemed to be heading in the right direction. But on Damian's 6th birthday, something horrifying happened. Everyone was celebrating Damian's special day, but Dog stood off to the side, looking deeply troubled. The nanny, as soon as saw his eyes, lost control and went up to the rooftop. She wrapped a rope around her neck and, without a second thought, jumped off the edge of the building. Amidst the chaotic scene, a reporter happened to capture this bizarre moment on camera. When Robert noticed, he quickly picked up his son to comfort him, yet the boy's demeanor remained strangely composed, and the boy even waved at the dog not far away. By early next morning, reporters had completely surrounded the embassy. His son's terrifying birthday party instantly made front-page headlines, and at that moment, Robert accidentally bumped into a reporter.
It's alright. You okay? Very sorry. Please, send me the bill. I'll cover the charges.
Alright, sir. Let's just say that you owe me one.
These words foreshadowed what was to come. Shortly after, a priest approached Robert. He bluntly stated that Damian is a demon and also mentioned that the boy's biological mother was not human, but a hellhound from hell. Damian's evil powers have awakened. If the boy is not dealt with quickly, Robert's wife will also suffer the consequences. Robert felt more and more absurd as he listened, and then he called security to have the priest removed. However, just as the priest reached the door, the reporter captured the scene once again. Later, when he developed the photos at home, he noticed something strange, a halo of light above the priest's head. At first, he thought it was just a camera exposure issue, but then he realized the same halo appeared in almost every photo. The next day, the couple planned to take Damian to church. But as they approached, Damian suddenly became hysterical, violently pulling at his mother's hair. Feeling helpless, Robert had to ask the driver to return right away, which barely calmed his restless and agitated son. Back home, Robert couldn't shake the priest's words from his mind. Moreover, his wife suddenly thought that Damian seemed to have never been sick since birth, and all these signs indicated that the boy seemed to be not quite normal. But to prevent his wife from discovering their son's death, Robert had no choice but to say things that would confuse her. However, the next day, the priest met Robert again and arranged to meet him at Magpie Bridge outside the church, promising that he would not appear again after this meeting. After speaking, he turned and left. To avoid the other person's pestering, Robert had no choice but to show up on time. Seeing this, the priest also went straight to the point, saying that Robert's wife was pregnant. At that time, the devil would definitely prevent the baby from being born. Use Damian to find a way to remove the fetus from the womb first, and then deal with the mother. Even Robert might fall victim to devil. The only way to solve all of this right now is to find a priest named Father Spiletto. However, Robert did not intend to believe the other party's lies and issued a stern warning to stay away from his family. But just after Robert left, the sky suddenly poured down with heavy rain, and the priest immediately realized that the demon had sensed his presence, so he quickened his pace to rush back to the church. But just as he reached the church door, when Robert got home, his wife announced that she was pregnant. This news was like a thunderbolt to Robert. But before he could recover, he immediately saw the news of the priest's accident. But at this moment, he still held onto a shred of hope. Until that day, while his wife was tending to the potted plants, their son happened to ride by on his bicycle. And then, in the very next second, subsequently, his wife was rushed to the hospital. Unfortunately, she miscarried again, confirming what the priest had warned: the demon would target the unborn child through Damian. Sure enough, after returning home, the reporter suddenly came to him and told him about their discovery. The nanny at the birthday party had a ring of light around her neck, but then she jumped to her death. The priest's photo also depicted the same scene, and, as expected, he unfortunately met a tragic end. So this means that the aperture represents a sign of death. To uncover the truth, the two began investigating. They first visited the priest's former residence, finding walls plastered with Bible pages. It was as if to resist the attack of a demon. Next, the reporter found the priest's diary, which not only accurately recorded Damian's birth date but also included details about the meteor impact on Earth and even precisely documented the itinerary of Robert's family. Then, the reporter handed Robert a photo, showing that the halo had also appeared on his own body. Now, to fully uncover the truth of the matter, it is necessary to find the priest who persuaded him to adopt Damian. However, when the two of them arrived at the hospital from years ago, they found that everything had changed. 6 years ago, shortly after Damian was born, the hospital had suffered a fire, and the priest had since disappeared. Later, they discovered a nun not far away, and it was from her that they learned of the priest's current whereabouts. The two immediately set off on their journey, and after much effort, they finally found the priest on a secluded island. However, he was now so badly burned that he was unrecognizable, and he had completely lost the ability to speak. But ultimately, unable to resist Robert's repeated pleas, he endured the severe pain to write down the burial place of Damian's mother. Soon, the two of them found a grave based on the address, but when they opened the coffin, they were shocked to find a jackal inside. Then Robert opened the adjacent coffin, and inside was indeed the corpse of an infant, who was actually his own biological child. The priest deliberately concealed the truth back then with the purpose of having Robert adopt the son of a demon. But now, even knowing the truth, it is already too late. Because elsewhere, the nanny took Damian to the hospital, pretending to visit a patient in order to deliberately send the medical staff away, then secretly injected poison into the foreline. She covered the wife's mouth until her heart completely stopped beating. When Robert heard the news, he was devastated. He knew that all of this was Damian's doing, so he immediately found Father Bugenhagen, whom the deceased priest had mentioned. He took out a package of knives blessed with holy water and told the two people that each knife had a different purpose. Damian definitely has a Satan's mark, and it's hidden under the boy hair. To destroy the demon's child completely, we must do it in a sacred place, a church, he instructed. First, plunge the dagger fully into his body. Then use the other daggers to release the demon's soul and spill his blood on God's altar. But just then, Robert's compassion unexpectedly overwhelmed him.
Who I've raised as my own son.
He's not your son, he's a beast. He's evil incarnate, now don't you forget that.
What if you're wrong? What if he is?
I'm not wrong.
Even so, Robert still couldn't accept it. He left without looking back after speaking his mind. The reporter had no choice but to take the weapon himself. All along the way, he kept trying to persuade Robert, knowing full well that he himself was the demon's next target.
You're asking me to stab a child. A little boy. Can't you see how insane that is? It's not real, Keith. There is no devil, there is no God, there is only here and now and life. And that is something I would never take away from any man, certainly not my own son. If he won't, I will.
And just as the reporter picked up the weapon, a worker upstairs accidentally stepped on an iron hammer at his feet. The hammer plummeted from above, crashing right into the billboard below. Then, in the very next second... At this point, Robert completely panicked. He knew there was no turning back now, so he immediately rushed home and cut his son's hair. Sure enough, he discovered a mark formed by the number 6 on the boy's back of neck. Just then, the nanny suddenly appeared. And she was actually a servant sent by the devil to protect Damian in the human world. But just as Robert rushed out with his son, they were again confronted by the nanny blocking their path. Left with no choice, Robert quickly shifted gears and floored the gas pedal in desperation. However, the drifting around corners quickly caught the police's attention. Sure enough, just as he arrived at the church with his son, ready to eliminate him with the sacred blade, countless red laser sights suddenly illuminated them from all directions. And this ultimate showdown between humans and demons ended in a draw when the police showed up and disrupted everything. At the end of the film, the country held a funeral for Robert, but the devil's son ultimately managed to stay by the president's side. What exactly is this metaphor suggesting? Please consider this issue carefully in the comments section. Honestly, I personally quite like this movie. It is filled with a sense of eeriness throughout. It's also filled with religious themes of fate and responsibility. But there's one thing I don't quite understand. In Western religions, it always seems like demons have way more power and influence on Earth than God does. This has always puzzled me. Does that mean only demons can meddle in human affairs? Is God just supposed to play a supporting role, unable to step in directly? If God isn't willing to help humanity, then what's the point of him anyway? Alright, that's all for today's story. I'm Storyteller. See you next time.